Genesis 6:2. And the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and took unto them wives. Whenever you see the verbiage, contrary to what you've been told, you see the verbiage in the Bible that states, it says sons of God, that is pertaining to those that worship the God of heaven and earth. If you need a reference for such things, Job 1:6. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also amongst them. See the delineation between worshipers of God, and then it throws Satan in there as an afterthought. John 1:12, but as many as receive him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. Those that worship God and believe on his name. These are the sons of God. This is what Genesis talks about at that time. Those people that worship God saw the daughters of the men that did it and took unto them wives, not realizing how detrimental it would be for their souls, but they liked what they saw. That's why the Bible denotes, make sure you know these women were fair. They were good to look at. These men of God like what they saw. How often has that been a man's downfall? We like what we see visually. Turn with me in Adventist home. The chapter is called Forbidden Marriages. For those of you new believers, it's chapter 9. Those new believers. The Adventist home can be considered the blueprint for marriage, for courtship. Something as simple as the furniture you have in your home, what to look for in a spouse, how to keep your home, what the courtship practices should be like. This is the blueprint for the Adventist. If you are going about trying to find yourself a mate and you're not consulting this book, you're doing yourself a disservice. And like the examples we're going to see later on, it will be to your detriment. Forbidden Marriages on page 61. We'll start with marriage of Christians with unbelievers, because that's what we're going to cover here. There is in the Christian world an astonishing, alarming indifference to the teachings of God's word in regard to the marriage of Christians with unbelievers. Many who profess to love and fear God choose to follow the bent of their own minds rather than take counsel of infinite wisdom in a matter which vitally concerns the happiness and well-being of both parties for this world and the next. Reason, judgment, and the fear of God are set aside, and blind impulse, stubborn determination are allowed to control. The divorce rate in the United States is over 50%. You would think in the Adventist community that would be lower, right? It's not. Why is that? Because we as Adventists have taken up the same standards that the world takes on when we get a criteria on who we want to be with. See right here what Sister White says, you throw common reasoning to the side. You throw God's commandments to the side. You throw infinite wisdom to the side. She goes on to say, men and women who are otherwise sensible and conscientious close their ears to counsel. They are deaf to the appeals and entreaties of friends and kindreds and of the servants of God. The expression of a caution or warning is regarded as impertinent meddling. And the friend who is faithful enough to utter a remonstrance is treated as an enemy. All this is as Satan would have it. He weaves his spell about the soul, and it becomes bewitched, infatuated. Reason lets fall the rein of self-control upon the neck of lust. Unsanctified passion bears sway until too late the victim awakens to a life of misery and bondage. This is not a picture drawn by the imagination, but a recital of facts. God's sanctions is not given to unions which he expressly forbids. Yet we still want to go after what we like. Amen. How unfortunate. Turn with me to Judges 13. Judges 13. Go down to verse 22. Let's look at this example. Because I feel like if we extrapolate a lot of what is going on in Judges concerning Samson, it will apply to the Adventist home. It'll apply to the believer. 22 reads, and Manoah said unto his wife, we shall surely die because we have seen God. But his wife said unto him, if the Lord were pleased to kill us, he would not receive a burnt offering and a meat offering at our hands. Neither would we have shown us all the things, nor would as at this time have told us such things. So here we have Manoah and his wife being visited by an angel of God, and he sets a standard for the child that they're about to have. He said, your child's going to be a Nazarene. This is all the criteria he needs to do. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. Don't cut his hair, among other things. The diet had to be a certain way. What he took into his mind had to be a certain way, right? Doesn't that sound familiar? Isn't there a group of people who have a certain standard, even though we are in the world, even though we are in Christian communities? Don't we have a certain standard as far as how we dress, how we eat, how we conduct ourselves, what we put into our mind, right? So it's applicable right now. The angel of the Lord gave Manoah and his wife all this criteria as to what needs to be done concerning this child. Right? And what happened next? Go on to chapter 14. And Samson went down to Timnah and saw a woman of Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. And he came up and told his father and his mother and said, I have seen a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. Now, therefore, get her for me to wife. Then his father and his mother said unto him, Is there never a woman among the daughters of thy brethren or among all my people that thou goest to take a wife of the uncircumcised Philistines? Samson said unto his father, Get her for me, for she pleaseth me well. There comes that whole fairness thing and that whole sight thing again. The Philistines were not believers. As a matter of fact, the Philistines were the occupying country. It was clearly understood that there was a distinction between both what they believed and what the children of Israel believed, right? Yet Samson saw this woman and she pleased him. And he said, Get her for me, for she pleaseth me well. And what was the cry of the parents? Is there not a believer amongst us that you want to go and take one of these worldly women and marry them? That was a common practice in that day. The children of Israel married amongst themselves. They were big enough and there was enough of them that it was not going to be any incest going on. But you wanted to make sure you ensure you had somebody that believed what you believe, somebody that gave their daily sacrifice, somebody that paid their tithes, somebody that paid their offering, somebody who dressed a certain kind of way, someone who was peculiar. The women of Timnah were not peculiar. They didn't practice dress reform. I think it might be safe to say that they ate some unclean meats also if they were if they were idolatrous people, right? At the marriage feast, you see what happens to Samson. This woman is given unto another. It enrages him. So we already see now that Samson's lack of discretion as far as which direction he goes in a relationship is coming into play. The Lord was able to use that, yes. But at what cost to Samson? In the midst of this, Samson was serving as a judge. So he was basically supposed to be the deliverer of the children of Israel. Go with me to chapter 16 and verse 4. And it came to pass afterwards that he loved the woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came unto her and said unto her, entice him and see wherein his great strength lieth, and by what means we may prevail against him, that we may bind him and to afflict him, and we will give thee every one of us 1,100 pieces of silver. What do you think about that? Somebody going to your significant other. Mind you, remember the Philistines are the invading country here. They are in essence the state, the government, the infrastructure. What if city government came to your spouse and said, we want to know why Mentee is doing this? Why is all the deceptions going on in the world so clear to him? We want you to find out what's going on, and we'll pay you for that. Does that sound far-fetched? Not as far-fetched as a time coming when the house will be divided over a certain day of worship, right? And the state comes and say, are there any Sabbath worshipers here, right? Point them out, right? Pretty much the same thing going on right here, right? It's just that it happened a couple of thousand years earlier. But history does repeat itself. In this scenario, they were going to say, hey, look, we need to find out why your boy's so strong, why he keep running off with the gates of our cities. How come he slew all these men with the jawbone of an ass? We need to find out what's going on. You find that out for us, and we'll reward you. Whereas later on, it'll be all Sabbath keepers. If your spouse is a Sabbath keeper, we need to know these things right now. The world is being covered in a plague. But the Sabbath keepers they're not getting any the repercussions of the plague. We need to find out why. And they'll ask your non-believing spouse to give up the goods, to drop the dime. Let us know what's going on, right? And she agreed. She went along with it. Let me ask you, we peel this back like it was an onion. You think this is the first time she betrayed a man? Remember, their values are not the values the children of Israel have. The woman, the woman of Timnah, and here Delilah. You really think this is the first time she dropped a dime on a man, or agreed to help find out something about a man? She is the agent for them right now. You understand that? On verse 6. And Delilah said to Samson, tell me, I pray thee, wherein thy great strength lieth, and wherewith thou mightest be bound to afflict thee. Gentlemen, would it not alarm you if you started dating a woman and she asking you to divulge what makes you tick? Is this not alarming to anybody else? Would you not run for your life from that woman? And I imagine this was going on during bedroom talk. I mean, let's be honest. Isn't that typically when this sort of thing happens, where you tell your deepest and your darkest secrets to your lover, and you be like, yeah, well, when I was little, I used to do this and I used to do that and all kinds of stuff. They find out stuff about you. And this is what she's asking. Thank you. This is what she's asking. Tell me what make your people tick. Tell me, how are you so strong? Tell me what's going on with your diet. How come you don't eat this? How come you don't cut your hair? She's asking him to divulge what makes him unique in such a manner that later on she's going to use that to ensnare him. He went through the whole thing with the robes. He went through the thing with, if you fasten, and she said, fasten it with a pin, and said unto him, the Philistines are upon you. He gave her different scenarios. Brothers and sisters, you dealing, you dating, you interacting, you courting with somebody who does not believe what you believe. Do not play these games. Do not play these games with people who don't believe what you believe, because this here is for blood. When the time comes and you have a disagreement, rest assured, every secret you divulge will come into play. You hear the phrase, the verbiage, all is fair in love and war. It's the reason why they say that. It's the reason why they say it's a thin line between love and hate too. Because everything about you that person liked or loved, when the time comes and they're not a believer, they will use it to wreck you. Ask me how I know. Huh? Didn't we say the divorce rate is 50% and nothing is changing in the Adventist community? I'm divorced. All these truths in this book. I actually read this book before I got married. What did I do? It could never happen to me. Clearly, I'm too smart for that. Clearly, yeah, she fine, right? That's all that mattered, right? How good she looked. And if we being honest, since not all of us at one point in time practice abstinence, isn't that typically what a swell man, how she performs in the bedroom, right? And then how we get to that point. So now because you start, just like Samson here, he starts interacting with this woman sexually, every and anything about her that would have detoured him and been a red flag, he discounted that because now his emotions are playing on his decision making. That's how it works. If nobody ever told you, you just heard it here first. Don't lay down with them. Abstain. The time it takes you to abstain, you will get to see what and who you are dealing with. And your emotions will not come into play when it comes to making a valuable decision on whether or not that person is good for you. This here is the mistake Samson made. You really think if you laying down with your lover and she asking you all this intimate stuff, and now she asks you, how can I kill you? That's basically what she's asking him, right? And it flew right over his head. He couldn't even see it. This woman trying to kill me. Yeah, the loving good, but this woman trying to kill me. And Samson completely missed the boat with it. So much so that what ended up happening to Samson? The very thing that caused him to be attracted to Delilah, he lost it. Took his eyesight, right? But you say, okay, Mentee, that was back then. Ain't nobody putting no eyes out now. We in 2021. What people look like taking eyes out? Okay. Let's apply Samson's eyes being a man's finances right now. In divorce court, if you are a man, you see it on TV, right? What's going on right now? with Mr. Bill Gates? What went on with Michael Jordan? What went on with Jeff Bezos? $500 million is a lot of money, right? She, in essence, is about to take his eyes, right? That's how he making things happen, right? That's, you know, their money before you hear them. You know they paid. If somebody say Jeff Bezos coming to your house, don't money talk? You know the money coming, right? You know it's an opportunity coming, right? Okay. So in our day, even though a woman can't gouge out your eyes, she can show enough get in them pockets. And you sure you want to start delving with somebody who don't believe what you believe? It don't seem that bad right now because we all poor men, right? We ain't got no money. I'm saying if you rob me, you'd be practicing. You know, it's just not a lot there. My car 20 years old. So a woman call herself taking half of my 20-year-old car. I applaud that. Go right ahead. But think of if you did have a lot, brothers and sisters. What's at stake now? Somebody asking you, how can I kill you, and then taking everything from you. Doesn't that sound about right in today's standards? Isn't that usually what happens? Men get divorced, and the woman can drag him and financially get taken care of. This now happens in the Adventist church. But you say, hey, Mentee, you know what? You're kind of running women into the ground a little bit. You know, it's this whole unequally yoked and not choosing this person. That's okay. It's quite all right. We're not going to beat you all over the head because it takes two to get into these situations, right? Just like with the man, just like men like what they see, women have a certain trigger point also, do they not? What would be that trigger? What would be the trigger that will make a woman feel the way a man feels when he sees a woman? Say it again. Huh? Somebody say the same thing? Wouldn't it be finances? Isn't that often what make Adventist women kind of bend the line or skirt the rule if they know that man is well off? For a woman, isn't that attractive to see a man that can provide a certain amount of security? No? Say it ain't so. Right? All of us know of a female friend or a girlfriend who married somebody who they knew probably wasn't the nicest guy, but he had some money. Is this or is this not accurate? 1 Samuel 25. 1 Samuel 25. Once again, the other scenario talked about dealing with non-believers. We're going to see right here, sometimes people in the church that clown too. 1 Samuel 25, verse number 3. Now the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife was Abigail, and she was a woman of good understanding and of a beautiful countenance. But the man was churlish and evil in his doings, and he was of the house of Caleb. Why did the Bible tell us this man was of the house of Caleb? Remember who Caleb was? Caleb was one of the few that gave a good report when the children of Israel was about to go into the promised land, right? Good start, right? Caleb exercised a certain amount of confidence and faith in God, right? So wouldn't it be safe to ascertain that this guy was a believer? He was a believer. That's why the Bible gives his lineage as being of that of Caleb. Not only was he a believer, but he was a believer from very good stock. His family were guys that would stand up for the truth, right? All right. So in today's, if we extrapolate it onto today, this guy would be an Adventist, third, fourth generation Adventist. Okay? and he was well off. But the Bible describes him as churlish and evil. Somebody in the church, in the pew, on a weekly basis, childish, churlish, evil. That's what, when you look up in Webster's dictionary, churlish, that's what it means. You act like a child. Not only did he act like a child, he acted like an evil child. Okay? What can be worse than a misbehaving child that looks to get into some kind of mischief? That's how the Bible described Nabal. But he was paid, right? So much so that David asked him, hey man, let us get some provisions. We know you got it like that. We know you got extra. You're not going to be hurting for nothing if you let us have some provisions, right? And how did he behave? We know the story. How did he behave towards David? He basically told him, in today's word, hey man, get out my face. I don't know you like that. That's how he related to David after David and his men did all they could to protect this man and his household and his family. So here we have believers, two professed believers, Nabal and his wife Abigail, but Nabal is basically a clown, a rich clown. Once again, let me ask you the question. Do you think Abigail knew this before she married him? Do you not think displays of his disposition and personality manifested themselves in the dating process, in the courting process? You don't think this woman knew she was dealing with a jerk of a husband before they got married? You fooling yourself. How many times have we seen stuff in our significant other from the day we started dating, 5 years down the line, like, oh, that used to be attractive to me. That's not attractive anymore, right? The very thing that attract you to them, they do day and night now. It used to be cute to you, but now you're up under the same roof and it's like, I used to think that was attractive. That snoring is not sexy anymore, right? The fact that she passed gas in the room you in, it used to be funny. It's not funny anymore, right? Abigail more than likely knew her husband was a jerk. So much so that when David was, he was feeling kind of upset about being rejected and being refused provisions, and he was on his way to kill him. The servant knew this. The servant intercepted Abigail. And what did the servant say? Evil is forecasted upon this house because Nabal railed on David and his men and refused to give them provisions. And what key phrase verbiage did the servant give? He said, you know he is a man of Belial and he can't be told anything. So the whole household knew he was a clown. And she married him because she was going to be taken care of. She was going to be well off, right? Can anybody say that? I mean, we beat the men over the head for being stupid and thinking with their eyes. But how often do women exhibit this behavior? Because someone is well off. They're in a good position financially. We overlook all the character flaws and all the traits and go with that person and hitch our wagon to that person because we think financially we'll be taken care of. And what ended up happening? The dude who was the baddest man in the land at that time was coming to kill her husband. And what did she have to do? To save her and her household. Mind you, the Bible says David was coming to kill all that pisseth against the wall. When you see that verbiage, that means the Zoekago family name is gone. Every male will be killed. No one will ever know you existed from this time forward. Y'all done. That's what David was coming to do. Okay? They were going to take the women and any man, child, or any man leaving, kill them. I can identify being of African descent. This is typically how Africans get down in war. You lose a war in Africa, it's a good chance your family heritage is going to be wiped out. All right? That's serious business when you talk about wiping a man's lineage off. Most men like to know we have a seed to succeed us. The family name will go down, will go on. And David was so offended, he's like, you know what? I'm killing all the dudes, all that pisseth against the wall, because men use the bathroom standing up. That's where the verbiage comes from. That's why it's used. So now we see here 2 examples on how unsanctioned marriages kind of come and bite us in the bottom. We all have an understanding of that. Yeah? All right, then. Let's go deeper. Still on chapter 9 in the Adventist Home, page 61. The paragraph begins with, God's commands are plain. Excuse me. The Lord commanded ancient Israel not to intermarry with the idolatrous nations around them. Neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughters thou shalt not give unto his sons, nor his daughters shalt thou take unto thy son. The reason given, infinite wisdom foreseeing the result of such unions declares, for they will turn away thy son from following me, that they may serve other gods. So will the anger of the Lord be kindled against you and destroy thee suddenly. For thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself above all people that are upon the face of the earth. You are supposed to be different. You are not supposed to be joining yourself to people who don't believe what you believe. The obvious here is Solomon, right? Do we remember what happened to Solomon? The reason why Solomon is so obvious because he took it to a whole nother level. Solomon was rich enough to say, yeah, I got multiple wives, I got concubines. What you gonna do about it? Who you want? You want me, the king, or you want these common people over here? But what happened when he started taking heathen wives? How does the Bible describe what they did to him? They drew his heart away from God. One of the issues we as men flatter ourselves to think we can juggle multiple relationships. Yeah? Isn't that the prevailing thought? When you see a man and he got multiple women, it's kind of looked at as a good thing, a badge of honor for men. But every instance I can find in the Bible where a man had multiple women, he had a lot of heartache in his house. And it was no different with Solomon. Remember, Solomon had hundreds of women. Imagine trying to please this heathen woman one night, and now you got to have the stamina to go please these other heathen women on other nights. You think you're a thoroughbred until you had to start doing that. Imagine having to worship to this heathen god on one night, and all your other heathen wives got their own heathen god. You see where this could scramble a man's brain, especially a man that's supposed to be leading the children of Israel, right? So he went from being the wisest to now being a man in shambles spiritually, not knowing exactly what he was doing. And that's how the Bible described. He lost touch with God because he wanted to be a player in essence. I mean, if we put it to today's standards, he was trying to be a playboy. Okay? He had multiple women, and he was trying to please multiple women, and he was trying to pacify them when it came to their religious beliefs. All of them. That's impossible. A man can barely juggle one relationship with a woman, let alone try and do what Solomon was doing. I understand how it ran him into the ground. I'm sure any man in here that has not been Adventist all their life tried at one point in time in their life to talk to this woman on this side of town and that woman on another side of town. How'd that work out? A lot of gas, right? You got to remember the conversation that you had and make sure you call the right name out. Can you imagine that for Solomon? Hundreds of these women, and you have to remember names and dates. They asking Solomon, you remember when our first kiss was? You remember our first date? You remember the first time you laid eyes on me? What must have been going through his mind? Yet we want to try these standards. We want to try these practices the way the world does it, right? Are you serious? I let this hair grow on my head. Most of this stuff is salt and pepper. And that's from dealing with one woman. One woman. I thought I was going bald. That's how stressful it was. Thinning up here, and then started thinning back there. And then after the separation, the hair actually grew back. We flatter ourselves by thinking, more of what we are as men when it comes to situations like this. You can't play the field. According to these standards, pick you one. Make sure you pick the right one. If you don't know how to pick the right one, the standards are in here. You can go right down the list and check off all the criteria. At that point, it becomes a personal issue, whether you like them tall, short, skinny, fat, light skin, dark skin, but the blueprint is there. Amen? Let's look at one last one. One that I think is probably about as sad as all the other one put together, but it is indicative of what happens today. 1 Kings 16. We have here King Ahab, once again, a believing man, professed believing man, and his wife Jezebel. Yes, Jezebel. A stark contrast between the two, Abigail and Jezebel. We have King Ahab, who got into a marriage for political reasons. The woman he married was in essence, she was just out there completely when it came to the difference between what Ahab and his people believe and what Jezebel and her people believe. So much so that she was the front person for the religion. She would intervene with the priests, the same priests that were trying to get the children of Israel to go astray. Jezebel was their front person. There's an occasion where Ahab wanted to buy a piece of real estate, and he could not get that piece of real estate. And he started to pout and cry. First of all, no man with an ounce of testosterone pumping through his veins would ever want his woman to see him cry, especially over something as minuscule as a business dealing. In this scenario here, we have an issue that's prevalent today. We have the male, female, masculine, feminine roles being reversed. You have here Ahab acting, crying like a little woman over a real estate deal, something he couldn't get. And his woman comes in the house, and the roles are supposed to be reversed. It's supposed to be the woman boo-hooing, getting emotional, getting in her feelings, and instead what happens? She come in like she holding her crock and say, what's wrong? What? You can't get that? I get it for you. That's the type of stuff a man does. Doesn't the man usually has the mindset of coming to the rescue of his woman? Baby, why you crying? Oh yeah, don't worry about that. I'm gonna take care of that. Throughout the entire relationship, Jezebel is the masculine. I need you to understand that if you have not heard this version before, in today's society, and feminism has a lot to do with it, there are code words, I know because I date, unfortunately. When you hear a woman say, I got my own, whatever it is, just know she is taking a masculine position. The typical attitude for the woman is, come help me, come rescue me, come do this for me, because I'm a vulnerable woman, right? When you start hearing women say verbiage such as, I don't need a man, whether they put their lifestyle or their education up front, just know that woman is now taking the masculine position. And that's in essence what Jezebel was doing. She was the shot caller in the house. Going deeper into this Adventist home, there's a role a man plays and there's a role a woman plays. When you start creating a gray line, you run into problems. Because no man worth his salt would let his woman take risk that a man should be taking. And there's nothing wrong with being a woman. There are benefits that come along with both. That's why God refers to his church as his bride. There are benefits that come along with being the bride of God. You get certain privileges. And nowadays, just like with female ordination, the line is being blurred somewhere. Imagine a woman being a head elder, giving orders to men on a daily basis, and then she comes home and her husband asks her something as simple as make me a sandwich. How she's gonna react. You think all of a sudden she's just gonna flip the switch and go into lovely wife mode? Is that what you think? Because you're fooling yourself. There's a standard. There's a reason why testosterone pumps through a man's veins and estrogen pumps through a woman's. Whenever you start blurring the line, you have issues in relationships such as Jezebel and Ahab's. What ultimately happened to Jezebel? Ahab came to his senses, but at what cost? Brothers and sisters. I said it before, I'll say it again as I close. You being the sons and daughters of God, there is nothing wrong with acquiring yourself another son or daughter of God. Just because it's sparse in this congregation does not mean God has not solidified somebody for you. They may not be in here. You may be able to convert an unbeliever. It'll be risky. I would not bet on that being what you go try to do. But are you to believe the God we serve does not have somebody for you that you got to go outside of what you believe and try to drag them in here kicking and screaming? Is that a chance you want to take? Because the multiple instances I can find in the Bible and in life itself say that's not guaranteed for us. I'm sorry. And according to these blueprints, if you can't get what the standard is, there's nothing wrong with being by yourself. Proverbs talks about that. Better to be alone in the corner of the house with a morsel of bread than what? Than with a warring woman. Talks about a man who can't keep his finances together. Isn't that what Proverbs say? The guy who can't provide for his family is worse than an infidel. These are the standards, brothers and sisters. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I love being the bearer of truth. If you cannot get it the way God said to have it, it's better to do without. Ask me how I know. God bless you. Yes, thank God.
I'll close the song. I'll do. I'll close the song. The hymn number 522.